Hi, we're doing 100 and 100, where we are reviewing 100 VR games in 100 days. Today we're looking at Contagion VR Outbreak. Contagion VR Outbreak is a first-person shooter that is also a horror title that will freak you out. It scared us. We're excited to review that with you today. Our VR Gear game reviews cover as many aspects of the game as we can so that you can make an informed decision before you go and try or buy these titles. So let's jump right in and take a deeper look at Contagion VR Outbreak. All right, so let's talk first about getting up and running with Contagion VR Outbreak. We found this game on the Viveport Infinity store and it was part of the subscription. It's also available on Steam and the Oculus store, and it's available on PSVR, so you can get this game just about anywhere. The download is about 14 gigabytes in size, and that will take a significant amount of time to download, even on faster internet connections, so be prepared to wait. Once the download complete, it will install automatically and you should be able to get into the game and start playing right away. You'll start the game in a room that has a bunch of different televisions as well as a screen that is running game credits. Not sure why that's there, but you're able to first start with a tutorial that will show you the ropes on how to interact with the game and what to expect as far as locomotion goes, and how to interact with different objects in the game, including how to reload your weapon or store items in your inventory or remove your backpack and put your backpack back on your back. Once you're done with the tutorial, you'll go back to the main menu room and you can select a level. We picked the first level because we weren't quite sure how well we would do on any of the subsequent levels, and good thing we did. This game is a horror game that is also a first-person shooter. You are going to be terrified. Music and the sound effects and the creaking of every single door or drawer that you open will really start to make you nervous. In fact, at one point when we were walking around the apartment of the character that you are in VR, I was getting actually scared to go into the other room, and I had already been there several times looking for different clues. So this is definitely a horror game done from the first-person perspective. Contagion VR has a very strong story and theme that are very well woven together for this experience. You start the game out in a parking garage, and from there you walk past several different characters that you're pretty sure are going to turn into zombies as you make your way out of the building. Your first objective is to make it to your apartment. And once there, you are given a set of instructions as to what you need to do before you leave. Soon enough, you'll find that getting out of the apartment complex, which is your second objective, won't be as easy as it was getting into your apartment. This game is played from the first-person perspective, and you're able to see your hands, and you're able to see on your body different places where you can put some inventory items, such as ammo for your gun, a place for a wrench, a cell phone holder on your hip, and there is a backpack. You can't see the backpack while you're playing, but you can reach behind your head, grab the backpack, and then interact with it, putting inventory items in there for later use. Other than that, you don't see much of yourself. I walked past a mirror in the game. It didn't reflect anything, so I couldn't see more of myself than just my hands and the inventory spots along my waist. There were a lot of controls for this game, and there was a lot to remember, and some of the button bindings weren't what you would expect, such as unloading and reloading your weapon. Those buttons weren't intuitive. They're very different from other games that we've played, and so in the heat of battle, reloading your weapon was not easy. Another problem that I found was once you let go of an item, it falls to the floor, and the game is very dark, and then finding and then picking those back up become very difficult. Just in the early part of the game, I lost a critical key that was required for the next step, and it was so dark I couldn't even find it on the ground. And I didn't mean to drop it. The controls just kind of fumbled and it dropped. So the controls are plentiful. There's a lot of different inputs, but they're not as you would expect. Grab and trigger are similar, but the rest of them are not as expected. And so the controls were difficult to learn, and there is a steep learning curve for these controls. All right, so the music and sound for this game really make it come to life, and it is terrifying. And when I say come to life, I mean brings the undead back to life, because you are walking through a building, you can hear the growling and groaning of people who have caught whatever the contagious virus is, and they are after you, and you can hear them clawing on the door. You can hear them banging on the door. And when you shoot them, you can hear their heads exploding all over you and the floor. And so the sound and the sound effects, along with the music that creates a mood in the game, as well as the way that you interact with a door or a drawer as it creaks open, this added so much, and it really made the game awesome. It was really great because of the sound and the music that was in the game. All right, so the player movement in this game is a really tough one. It's difficult to carry out this type of narrative that requires you to walk through a scary apartment complex or a scary scene without having the player move the way this game has you move. We had the setting on the lower intensity. There is a more intense way of moving through the game, which I really don't want to do. To move forward and backwards, you can use your left joystick, and to rotate left or right, you use the right joystick. And so you can imagine sitting while playing this game. I was sitting on a rotating stool, and I could rotate left and right with my joystick, but I could also rotate left and right on my stool. And so I became very disoriented in the real world and very motion sick in the virtual world because of the player movement mechanics. Now, this is all that we really have for motion in VR for these types of titles, but they do cause you to be somewhat sick when you do it. One problem with the motion, though, was when I was holding a flashlight in my left hand, all of a sudden, when I would shine it forward and I would have to tilt my wrist backwards, all of the controls became inverted as to the motion. Not inverted as to the world, but as to what the controls used to do. So instead of being forward, when I would tilt the controller toward me, forward was now backward. The controller mimics the direction that you're pointing the controller when you provide input into the joysticks. And so that is somewhat disorienting when it comes to controlling your character in this game. Okay, so motion sickness. This game will make you so sick if you aren't used to VR. I'm used to VR, but I got so sick anyway, and I didn't have the high intensity motion turned on, and I didn't even have the high intensity motion turned on. The reason this happens is because your visual cues are saying that you're moving forward or turning or walking backwards, but your physical cues don't align. And so you're going to feel that separation in what you see and what you feel, and that will cause you to be motion. There's no real avoiding that, but this game is what it is, and if you're willing to jump in and try your hand at it, you just might get motion sick. Okay, for environment and immersion, my goodness, this game was intense. I was scared. I was nervous. I was anxious. I felt a lot of emotions because this game did such a great job at telling you a story, setting you up in just the right way, and timing things so that you would feel afraid. And I felt afraid. So the game did a great job at helping me feel immersed in the experience. The environment really added to that by including things like creaking doors, creaking floors, groaning sick people behind apartment doors, and the occasional lurking shadow that is slowly moving towards you that you can vaguely hear out of the side of your ear. So the environment and immersion was very convincing, very engaging, and yeah, my goodness, just remembering it makes me a little nervous and scared again. All right, so let's look at the scorecard for Contagion VR Outbreak. First, let's talk about theme and story. This game is phenomenal. It has an outstanding theme, and it ties in a really compelling story. We are giving this game the highest possible score of a 10 out of 10 for theme and story. All right, so controls for this game, we're giving it an 8 out of 10. There was a lot of input, there was a lot of things to learn, and the buttons allowed you to interact with the world in a somewhat sophisticated way. But some of the button bindings weren't familiar, and they were difficult to execute in the heat of battle, especially those that you really need to rely on to fight off some of the oncoming enemies. If the button combinations and the input requirements are such that they take too long, then the controls just aren't set up right. So there was a lot going on there. Some deductions though for misalignment of tasks needing to be done and speed that it needs to be done with all the different button combinations. So an 8 out of 10 for controls on this one. All right, music and sound was top notch in this game. We're giving it a 10 out of 10 for music and sound. The sound effects were outstanding. The spatial audio was spot on. The timing of certain elements as they came into your sound were just fantastic, and we really enjoyed this game. We wish other game developers took as much time as these ones did to really create a great auditory experience. So a 10 out of 10 for music and sound. For player movement, we are giving an average high score of a 6 out of 10. This has to do with some of the inherent limitations of VR, but the game developer picked this form of movement for the game, and that is what it is. So a 6 out of 10 for movement in this game, because this style of movement isn't friendly for new people to VR. It is also jarring if you're in the game for long extended periods of time, and so a 6 out of 10 for player movement. For motion sickness, this game is getting a 4 out of 10. We're giving a few extra points because there's 2 different modes you can use for movement, but neither of which actually helps with motion sickness or helps reduce it. It, in fact, is giving you the option to engage in a type of movement that would increase your motion sickness if you are sensitive to it, but there's some extra points there for giving options to the game player on what type of motion sickness they're willing to tolerate while in the game. So a 4 out of 10 for motion sickness. Environment and immersion for this game is going to get a perfect score of a 10 out of 10. This game was so well put together. The execution by the developers was very impressive, and we actually felt what I think the game developers wanted us to feel. They wanted us to feel afraid at certain times, they wanted us to feel anxious at certain times, and they wanted us to look for answers and be curious. And we felt all those things, and the game carried us through those different experiences, and the environment was set up just right so that we could. So a 10 out of 10 for environment and immersion. So the overall score for Contagion VR Outbreak is a very high 8 out of 10 on our VR Gear game review. We really enjoyed this one, or rather we were scared while playing it, and I wanted it to end at certain points because it was kind of terrifying to see these very sick people, or maybe they were zombies. They were coming after you, wanting to kill you. In fact, they did at one point, and that was terrifying. It was a great game. We might come back if we have the courage to, but it was definitely a title that you should definitely go try this one out. This has been 100 in 100, where we are reviewing 100 VR games in 100 days. Hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we release another VR game review tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.